The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. As Jesus continued his journey to Jerusalem, he traveled through Samaria and Galilee. As he was entering a village, 10 lepers met him. They stood at a distance from him and raised their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." And when he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." As they were going, they were cleansed. And one of them, realizing he had been healed, returned glorifying God in a loud voice, and fell at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. Jesus said in reply, "10 were cleansed, were they not? Where are the other 9? Has none but this foreigner returned to give thanks to God?" Then he said to him, "Stand up and go. Your faith has saved you." The Gospel of the Lord.
This weekend here at the University of Notre Dame, we celebrate Mission Sunday. We celebrate the joys and the blessings that the Lord God has blessed us with through the missions of the Congregation of Holy Cross. I stand here in gratitude to you and to all those who have over the years been part of the missions of the Church and the Congregation of Holy Cross, joining missionary efforts, whether in person or by supporting those in the mission. This Sunday, I stand here to ask you here present to be part of this mission, to pray for those in the missions, those who have and are dedicating their lives, leaving families and homes, and being in foreign lands in order to preach and spread the kind of love that only Christ could give. I also invite you to contribute today by way of your generous donations to support those in the work of the missions, as well as the beneficiaries of the mission work. I believe, just like what Pope Francis has taught us, that by the virtue of our baptism, we are all missionaries. We are called to participate in the works of the mission. More than making God known, loved, and served here at this University of Our Lady and other parts of this country, the Congregation of Holy Cross works in 15 other countries in the world, spanning from Latin America, Africa, Europe, and Asia. And sometimes we can be tempted to look at this university and the mission here and maybe assume that the works of Holy Cross around the world look pretty much the same. But the dynamics of the missions in different places is very, very different. It's a dynamic that is challenging. In some places, it's really challenging and can be truly grueling, but there are also lots of success stories. And sometimes the stories are the same because they are the stories that bring people into the church, bring people to Christ, educating the minds and the hearts. And so I stand here today at least to share some of those success stories. And I will start with the stories that I've learned from here, being here in graduate school for the past 7, 8 years now. This summer, I was blessed to celebrate a wedding of a couple here, Jake and Rebecca. They called and asked me to celebrate their wedding. Apparently, they went to the law school here. And my first question to them was, how did they get to know me? But I was a priest in residence at Keogh Hall, and when they were here at law school, they used to come there from us. So over the years after they graduated, they asked to come back here and celebrate their wedding here, and I was asked to do that. But they both were not Catholics when they came to this university. And through the mission of Holy Cross and the faith community here, they were so attracted to the life and ministry of Holy Cross, but also the life of Catholic Christians. And so they both converted. And when I had their wedding here, this church was full, but none of them was Catholic except the two of them. So you can imagine, yeah, when I say the Lord be with you, and it was just the two of them who would respond, and with your spirit. Well, good enough, we had a choir and a band here who were Catholic, so at least they helped in that response. I am from the northern part of Tanzania. Maybe you've heard the name Kilimanjaro, the mountain. That's where I was born and raised, on the slopes of the mountains there. But then 2 summers ago, I was ordained in 2008, and I worked in one of our parishes up in the northern part of Tanzania too, in the hills of Ngorongoro and Serengeti. Maybe you know about that. Lion King can remind you a little bit of that. And we ran a school up there in our parish there. It's called St. Brendan's Parish in Kitete. And we taught so many skills. It was a vocational school called Audrey Veldman, a school very much supported by very generous donors from here. And we taught, the skills that we taught range from carpentry, masonry, dressmaking, catering, vehicle mechanics, and so on. And we also gave them a few lessons in English and introduction to computers. But because of the poor conditions of this mostly small-scale agricultural area, over 60% of boys and girls who finish school there, finish grade school, will not get a chance to go to high school or college. And so they end up either in small-scale wheat and barley cultivation, plus keeping a few animals. And for most girls, some of them end up in early marriage, sometimes being a second or even a third wife. So last summer, I was in western Tanzania. This is completely the opposite part of where I come from in the country. And I was doing my PhD research. And I received a phone call from one of my former students. About 10 years ago, she was my student. Her name was Jacinta. And she called me to ask if I could come into the parish to baptize her 2 sons, Jerome and Jasper. They were 3 years and 1 year old. So after a long conversation on the phone, I finally decided I was going to leave my research field for 3 days and go there to do this sacred honor. The main story here is not just about how she met her husband and how she currently is self-employed, making dresses and using African print materials, but it's the story of how her life really changed after meeting the men of Holy Cross and the Holy Cross people who are working in this parish. Her story doesn't differ from any other story of the people who have met Holy Cross. When I was working in this parish, I would gather most of the youth in the evening and play volleyball with them. We had a handmade volleyball net in a dusty court. We will have some used volleyballs. We get some students from Notre Dame here every summer to come and do some summer work. And so they bring us, some of the used volleyballs. So that's what we use. And I was sitting on the side waiting for my turn to go in. And every time I did that, I talked to some of the young men and women sitting next to me and asked them all kinds of questions. Whether they go to school or not, who they are, where they come from, and if they're not going to school, why can't they just come and join us in the vocational school? They can learn a few skills because they shouldn't just stay home doing nothing. And of course, the answers were pretty much the same. I can't pay my way through school, or my parents can't afford to do that. And this is not maybe a $30,000 school. It is just maybe a $450 school annually for, tuition and board. So my work from then on was to try to convince them to come to our school, and maybe even sometimes walk to their homes and speak to their parents and try to convince them that we can work this out. You can try to contribute just a little, in terms of money, or you can, I see you have a piece of land here, we can get some firewood because we need firewood to cook. Maybe you're a farmer, you can give us maybe a sack of beans or corn. We need that for food at school. And then I will call the Mission Center office, which is right here at Notre Dame, and I'll talk to the director of Mission Center, and I'll ask if there's any way they can subsidize some of the monies that we need in order to keep these students for 3 years to get their skills. And so that would work. And that's how I met Jacinta. That's how she came to our school. She wasn't even a Catholic. And that's how I met so many other young men and women who came to our school. And over the years, they've managed to get skills that have given them self-employment, or maybe some of them have been employed in some construction companies. So I probably would not know how all the students' life ended, but I know that we strengthened many youth to be self-employed, to get a construction job somewhere, or even lucky enough to get vocations to priesthood and religious life in Holy Cross and the diocese, the local diocese. But I think the most work that we did was to educate the minds and the hearts of many. And one of them was this wonderful young girl who I was able to baptize his 2 sons. This was a blessing to me, it was a blessing to her and also to her family. Not speaking to the fact that I myself, in a big way, am a beneficiary of missionary work, which was done in my home area. That's how I was able to go to school, and that's how I was able to follow my call to priesthood. And I'm standing here today in graduate school here at Notre Dame. It's a blessing to me. But this blessing didn't just come from nowhere. It came from some very generous people, and you are part of that. We heard in the gospel today that probably one of the greatest sin we can do is the sin of ingratitude. And I don't think we want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of that, at least not today. I want to be able to come back to say thank you to you because of what you have done over the years. And I'm sure that every one of us who participate in either supporting the missions or maybe step into the field of the mission is just a way of going back to God and say thank you for everything that you have granted me. So thank you so much for what you have done over the years and what you will be doing today and the days to come. And we just want you to know that you have our prayers, you are in our hearts as you keep us in your hearts. We know that even with the other 9 who did not return to Jesus in gratitude, it didn't change the mission and the ministry of Christ. Christ continued to heal, he continued to proclaim the kingdom of God. And so I therefore urge you and appeal to you today to never get tired of fulfilling your baptism call to be missionaries. And please continue with your generosity to support the missions of the Congregation of Holy Cross to help us educate the minds and the hearts of many people.